Le très honorable Premier ministre.
Mr. Speaker, if the honourable member actually cared about seniors, he wouldn't have been part of the government that raised the retirement age, driving seniors further into poverty. We brought it back to 65. We continue to step up with supports for seniors, and we're going to continue to stand to defend their pensions as well. While his Conservative colleagues are attacking the CPP, he's finally realized that perhaps the CPP is a good thing, has come out in defense of it after decades, Mr. Speaker, of attacking seniors and their pensions, of attacking the CPP. We're going to continue unequivocally to stand to support seniors right across the country, unlike the Leader of the Opposition.
Let's go, Pierre.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
Not only have we always defended the CPP, the number of seniors requiring food banks was drastically lower when we were in government. Now let me take a quote a British Columbian who reported to the Food Banks Canada report the following: "The cost of housing is indescribable. Many of our users are paying 50% of their annual income in rent to provide for accommodations if they can find them," end quote. This is the housing hell that this Prime Minister and the NDP have caused after 8 years. Will he realize that we don't need more photo ops, we don't need more bureaucracy, we need more homes?
Le très honorable Premier ministre.
Mr. Speaker, as the Leader of the Opposition has put forward no plan for housing, he lacks credibility on this issue. We are taking bold action to get more affordable homes built. Indeed, just today, the Minister of Housing is in British Columbia, is in Kelowna for our most recent Housing Accelerator announcement, which will streamline building permits and allow for high-density housing near public transit, spurring the construction of up to 20,000 new housing units over the next decade in Kelowna. We're also working with Kelowna to make city-owned lands available for housing in partnership with nonprofits, and we look forward to sign more agreements right across the country, delivering for Canadians on housing.
The Honourable Member for Bailey-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Quebec National Assembly unanimously adopted a motion that confirms the economic viability of a sovereign Quebec. One in a series of unanimous motions that speaks for all of Quebec. So, independently of his personal preference, does the Prime Minister recognise Quebec's capacity to succeed economically as an independent country? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Oh my God, Mr. Speaker. The Bloc once again is trying to reopen a squabble between federal and provincial politics. It's astounding, to be honest. The reality is, yes, of course, Quebecers are proud. They're a proud nation. They're ready to build a better future, but they know full well that this future is best within Canada. And that's why, as a Canadian government, we're here to invest in Quebec, in Northvolt, in Davies, in lithium mines, hand in hand with the Quebec government to build a better future for all Quebecers and all Canadians. The Honourable Member for Bailey-Chambly. Well, you know that enthusiasm, well, we've already heard it before in Quebec, but I would like to remind the Prime Minister, who claims to speak for many people, that unanimously, including the Premier of Quebec, unanimously was it adopted a motion saying that Quebec was capable. I'm not saying if he knows how to count, the Prime Minister knows how to count, or if he likes it, but does he agree with the statement that Quebec can be a sovereign nation, economically speaking? That's it. Simple question. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, over the past few years, I've been very pleased to have made announcements hand in hand with Premier Legault, and we have spoken a lot about the importance of reducing the wealth gap between Quebec and other provinces, because we know that Quebec is capable of doing more. economic
that
growth
a lot
is
of
here
Quebecers
for
want to
Quebecers,
separate
and we're
from
here to
Quebec.
help
I think
them
there's just a small
and to
handful of
also
people,
benefit
sorry,
as
from Canada. I think
Canadians
there's a small
of
handful of people in Quebec that
our
want to separate from
combined
Canada.
economic
Not as many as you might think.
improvements, and they have shown that they are worthy of this, and we will continue to work with Quebecers in order to build a prosperous future
Leave a
for
comment.
everyone.
Drop a comment in the chat or drop a comment below. Let me know what you think.
L'honorable député de Burnaby Sud.
I might be totally out of base.
2
Oh, here we
million
go.
Canadians had to use the food bank in 1 month alone. This is a direct result of Liberals and Conservatives who continue to search and distract from what's going on, when the real reason was what's causing this. Canadians know really well when they were asked the question, greedy CEOs. Now, why will the Prime Minister understand what Canadians already do?
Le très honorable Premier ministre.
Mr. Speaker, we understand, we see firsthand how Canadians are struggling with the cost of food, groceries, and housing. That's why we're taking concrete actions to support them through this, whether it be with the grocery rebate, whether it be with $10 a day child care, whether it be with a dental care that's going to support young children, whether it be the initiatives we're taking across this country to create good jobs and economic growth, whether it be with the GST rebate checks, whether it be with the climate action rebate that's putting money in people's pockets right across the country. We're going to continue to be there for Canadians as we have in years past, as we lifted hundreds of thousands of kids out of poverty, as we've lifted over 1 million Canadians out of poverty. We know there's more work to do, and we are going to continue to do it, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Burnaby South.
While Liberals and Conservatives continue to distract, Canadians know corporate greed is driving up the cost of food.
That's right.
2 millions de Canadiens visitent les banques.
2 million Canadians visit food banks, whilst profits of large grocery stores were close to $4 billion. When the Conservatives and Liberals have a choice, they always choose CEOs over Canadians. So the NDP forced them to come back before the committee to answer the questions they refused to ask. Will the Prime Minister admit that his government's approach is a total failure? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, our objective is to make life more affordable and to make sure that companies pay their just part. The Minister for Innovation met CEOs from large grocery chains as well as producers, local and international food producers, so that we can highlight the necessity in making groceries more affordable. I hope that all members will join us so that we can adopt a housing act and affordable grocery acts as rapidly as possible in order to improve competitivity in the field.
Well, Leader of the Opposition.
It's like a parallel universe every time the NDP leader stands up. It attacks the very government he's a part of. And laments how miserable life is for Canadians after 2 years of him being part of voting for quadrupling the carbon tax, driving up inflationary deficits, and, of course, driving 2 million people to the food banks in a single month. He blames greed for all this hunger. He's right. It is the greed of Liberal and NDP politicians who keep taking more and more from Canadians. Will they reverse these disastrous policies?
Isn't that perfect?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
All of us in this House see how Canadians are struggling. We just have different responses to it. The Conservative Party is proposing cuts to government services, cuts to investments that are going to support seniors, cuts to investments that are going to support families, whether it's dental care or child care. The Conservative Party thinks you can cut your way to prosperity when the reality is, Mr. Speaker,
Liberals think they can tax their way to it.
In child care, in dental care, in supports for seniors, in supports for students, have actually helped Canadians through some difficult times and will continue to be there for them into the coming years.
Yeah, taxes to death.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
Being there for Canadians, he's taking money out of their pockets. And if you don't believe me,
Bingo.
listen to the Governor of the Bank of Canada, who said, and I quote, "Today, government spending will be adding to demand more than supply is growing. And in an environment where we are trying to moderate spending and get inflation down, that is not helpful. That adds to the voices of the former Liberal Finance Minister John Manley, who accused this Prime Minister of pressing on the inflationary gas pedal. Will the Prime Minister tell us, does he agree with the bank governor that his government spending is not helpful on inflation?
Le très honorable Premier Ministre.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians know we need support and we need more supply on the housing crisis, and that's why we are there investing with municipalities to deliver more housing. In Brampton, our housing agreement will spur the construction of more than 24,000 homes over the next decade. That's an investment that the Leader of the Opposition would cut. In other cities like Richmond Hill, Moncton, and Ajax just this week are passing more ambitious housing plans at their local councils in response to the federal housing accelerator. While the Leader of the Opposition would rip up these agreements, we're focused on building solutions that'll work for communities right across the country.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
The question wasn't about his housing photo ops. The question was about the rate of inflation and its link to government spending. And I quote the Governor of the Bank of Canada on this point today, and I quote, "Government spending will be adding to demand more than supply is growing. And in an environment where we are trying to moderate spending and get inflation down, that is not helpful." Right. He's now clearly saying that government spending is driving up inflation. So very simple question. Does the Prime Minister agree with the bank governor that deficits are driving inflation? Yes or no?
Le très honorable Premier Ministre.
Except, Mr. Speaker, that inflation is steadily coming down, Mr. Speaker, even as we continue to
he living in a dream world
with
or what?
communities across the country. And by the way, if the opposition leader cared so much about getting more homes built, he would support our Affordable Housing and Groceries Act. This legislation will remove the GST on the construction of rental homes, which housing advocates and developers have described as a game changer. That's the relief that Canadians need. So let's keep moving these important measures forward, and let's keep getting Canadians the housing relief they need instead of political attacks and cuts from the Conservatives.
I'd like to remind all members, please, to wait your turn to take the microphone. I know that some members are very enthusiastic, but there are other members who are certainly going to be asking their questions. The honourable member, the honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He is very determined to avoid discussing the growing evidence of the link between his deficits and the inflation Canadians pay. So let's review what the bank governor said today. He said, 1, inflation risks are rising. 2, that inflation won't get back to target until the year 2025, 2 years out. And 3, the bank is now leaving its door open to further rate hikes, probably spurred on by the deficits of this government. With mortgage payments up 150%, for God's sakes, won't he get rid of these inflationary deficits so that Canadians can keep their homes?
Le très honorable Premier Ministre.
Mr. Speaker, what the Leader of the Opposition is proposing is to cut spending and supports for Canadians in the hopes that Canadians will somehow do better that way. We disagree. What Canadians need is greater investment in supply of housing, for example. That's why through our agreements, we're unlocking new homes and opportunities for growth in the city of Hamilton by spurring the construction of thousands of homes over the next decade, like we are across the country. The Mayor of Hamilton actually said our housing agreement was absolutely a big deal, and I couldn't agree more. When we work together with a strong and ambitious plan, we can get more homes built faster. While the Leader of the Opposition's plan would see these agreements ripped up and stalled, we will keep going forward to help Canadians.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
You know one word he never used in that big rambling, read-off answer? Done. Because none of those houses are done. They're all promises. But he's been promising to build affordable homes for 8 years. Since he first made that promise, housing costs have doubled, and none of the promises have come to fruition. Yes, other levels of government have politicians that are thrilled to have more money to bloat their bureaucracies. When will he realize that we don't make housing affordable by building bureaucracy? We have to build homes.
très honorable Premier ministre.
Mr. Speaker, we are working hand in hand with municipalities across this country, whether it be Kelowna or
Word
Hamilton
salad.
or Ajax or now Halifax, where we're continuing to move forward
Hall of
with
words.
investments that are going to respond to people. And I have to say, I was in Brampton just last week, Mr. Speaker, and as we were making another announcement about new homes coming up, we were standing on the site of a building that we announced 2 years ago that was opening its doors to new residents today. Mr. Speaker, this is what we are doing. After that member was housing minister who got nothing done, we're there to invest in Canadians and build a stronger future.
He gets quite excited, doesn't he? Quite the drama. Oh yeah, right. He was a drama teacher.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
Mr. Speaker, he has the best photo ops in the history of photo ops. We'll give him credit for that. He wants to know what I got done when I was housing minister. The average rent was $950. It's now over $2,000. When I was housing minister, the average mortgage payment was $1,400. It's now well over $3,500. When I was housing minister, the average needed down payment was $20,000, and you could own a home on average by 29. Now those numbers have skyrocketed. I deal in the world of results. He deals in the world of photo ops. I know which ones Canadians prefer.
Well, be careful, or the speaker will probably mute them. Oh, maybe not this time.
Le très honorable Premier ministre.
Mr. Speaker, while he continues to insult and slag cities and municipalities across this country, we're going to continue work with them, like we're working with the city of Halifax to build more homes so locals can thrive in their community. Recently, we announced an agreement with Halifax to fast-track 2,600 permitted units over the next 3 years, spurring the construction of thousands of homes over the next decade. But he wants to talk about what happened when he was housing minister. When he was housing minister, he announced $300 million and got 99 homes built, Mr. Speaker. That's his record as housing minister. We're building homes right across the country. We're doing it for real, Mr. Speaker.
There's the mute. He's muted them. He doesn't like them having any. Oh, there we go.
Colleagues, it's really important to maintain decorum and respect in this House. Please leave your comments to the person who's asking the question, and please listen to the comments of the person who's offering the answers. J'aimerais reconnaître maintenant le député.
The Honourable Member for Baillieu-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, the money that the Prime Minister is boasting about spending is Quebecers' money, Quebecers' taxes. With regard to the motion I mentioned, if he says he agrees, he's in hot water. If he's against, he's in hot water. He's going to be in hot water anyway. Next time he's next to Premier Legault, he will be asked the following question: why, for once, is he still incapable of just saying what's on his mind? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, when I go to Montreal in my riding, when I travel throughout Quebec and I speak to people on their concerns with regards to climate change, to the affordability of life, to the affordability of housing, to the difficult international situation in which we live, no one talks to me about sovereignty. No one talks to me about creating a new country. They talk to me about how we can work together to get concrete results in Quebec. We know that the Bloc Québécois always wants to squabble back to sovereignty, but as proud Quebecers and proud Canadians, we will continue to fight hard for Quebecers and all Canadians. The Honourable Member for Baillieu-Chambly. I'm like these people. Well, I don't want to talk to him about subjects he doesn't know about. He doesn't want to answer my simple question. So the answer is Quebec can and Quebec should be independent as rapidly as possible. He can agree, he can disagree, but he can't say that there aren't 125 members of the National Assembly of Quebec who unanimously confirm that Quebec can be a viable country economically speaking, and that the Prime Minister does not have the spine to say whether he's for or against this motion. I would like to remind the honourable member, remind him of what I said last week. It was very important not to question the courage of any member in the House. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, according to the Bloc Québécois, sovereignty is an urgent matter.
Got to keep in mind
They've been
that
here in Ottawa for 30 years, and it's been urgent for 30 years, apparently. They keep trying to bring this to the table. The reality is we have work to do all together to deliver for Quebecers, to deliver housing, to deliver affordable groceries, to deliver a more safe and cleaner planet. That is what we are working on right now, and I work very well with the Quebec government and will continue to do so. We'll put forward the will of Quebecers, that is, to create a better world, rather than putting forward the squabbles of the Bloc Québécois. After 8 years of this Prime Minister, the inflation is not worth the cost. The Governor of the Bank of Canada stated 3 things. First of all, inflation risks have increased. Secondly, interest rates could increase again. Thirdly, deficits and expenditures increase, government expenditures increase inflation and increase the possibility of interest rates being increased once again. Will the Prime Minister finally reverse his inflationist policies before Canadians risk losing their houses? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, it is clear that there is a stark disagreement between myself and the Leader of the Opposition. When Canadians are finding it hard, what he proposes are cuts in services, cuts in assistance and benefits. We will continue to be there for them. The Conservatives will always choose austerity and cuts when times are tough. So longer waiting times in emergency centres, more expensive childcare, uncertainty for retirees, and no action against climate change. That is an irresponsible approach, and that's what the Conservatives has to offer. We, on our side, will be here to help people. We will invest in their future. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. The disagreement isn't with me, it's with the Governor of the Bank of Canada, who today said that government spending increases inflation rates. I know that the Prime Minister loves spending money. He doubled national debt, and now he's forcing Canadians to cut in their own personal decisions. Does the Prime Minister agree with the Governor of the Bank of Canada's report? Yes or no? Government spending increases inflation. Yes or no? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Contrary to the Leader of the Opposition, we will always respect the independence of the Governor of the Bank of Canada. But as we saw in public accounts, we have reduced deficits without cutting in support that Canadians need. We have the lowest deficit in G7 countries, the best debt-GDP ratio, and we've conserved our AAA rating, and inflation is going down. So we don't need conservative cuts. We can be here responsibly to help Canadians and create growth for Canada. And that is exactly what we are doing. Mr. Speaker, people are already cutting in their personal life because of the 150% increase in mortgage payments, monthly payments since this Prime Minister came into power. People have to abandon their homes, become homeless, or decide to cut their meals, and that is the reality. Does he agree that this government's deficits increase inflation and inflation rates? Yes or no? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are faced with a housing crisis. The Conservative solution is to cut in government investments in housing. We have chosen an alternative. To reduce the cost of housing, let us build more housing, and that is exactly what we are doing. Just today, Kelowna will simplify the building permit process to allow better density near transit hubs, which will stimulate the building of up to 20,000 new housing units over the next 10 years. We are here to invest to create better housing, while the Conservatives propose austerity and cuts.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
Again, with all of his expensive promises that have not completed a single home. He mentions that I spent only $300 million on housing, but he got the number of houses built wrong. It was actually 200,000 homes that were built in the year I was housing minister. But we know that numbers aren't his strength, Mr. Speaker. This is the guy who thinks budgets balance themselves, who doesn't think about monetary policy, who doubled the debt, doubled housing costs, doubled the rent. What else is going to double before this Prime Minister realizes that he's just not worth the cost?
Le très honorable Premier ministre.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The member opposite knows full well he can look in the history records. A $300 million program which delivered 99 homes. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, we are continuing to work hand in hand with municipalities, with community leaders, with nonprofits across the country to move forward on building more homes, on responding to the supply challenges. That's why, for example, we're removing GST from new apartment buildings. But unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, the members opposite refuse to allow that bill to move forward, are continuing to block it, and they don't want to vote for it either, Mr. Speaker. We're going to be there to support Canadians every step of the way.
No, they're not the Canadians every step of the way. They're not.
L'honorable député de Burnaby.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
The crisis
Here
in
we
this
go.
country is deeply concerning. People are living in tents, people are living in cars. Now in Saskatchewan, people are resorting to living in apartment lobbies. This is a direct result of Liberals and Conservatives who lost 1 million affordable homes over the past number of years. Even the Saskatchewan Landlord Association is calling for action. So when will the Prime Minister fix the mess they created and house people this winter?
Le très honorable Premier ministre.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Working very closely with municipalities across this country on housing and homelessness, on building more homes, on improving supply. In the member opposite's hometown of Brampton, our housing agreement will spur the construction of more than 24,000 homes over the next decade by allowing higher density housing near public transit. In other cities like Richmond Hill, Moncton, Ajax, just this week are passing more ambitious housing plans at their local councils in response to federal leadership. In Moncton, in Halifax, in Kelowna, in other places across this country, we continue to invest in agreements that are going to build more homes quicker, to support Canadians and build a brighter future for everyone.
It had 8 years to do that.
L'honorable député d'Edmonton, Griesbach.
Mr. Speaker, the humanitarian situation in Gaza is getting worse by the minute. This collective punishment has now claimed the lives of over 6,000 people. The 12-year-old daughter of one of my constituents remains stuck in Gaza, separated from both her parents, and we have no information on her whereabouts. We need more humanitarian aid and a response that is fair to both Israeli and Palestinian civilians. When will this government join New Democrats in calling for a ceasefire now?
Le très honorable Premier ministre.
Mr. Speaker, we unequivocally condemn Hamas's terrorist attack against Israel. We support Israel's right to defend itself in accordance with international law. We are deeply concerned about the situation in Gaza. As I said, there are ongoing diplomatic conversations about consideration of humanitarian pauses, and that is something that Canada supports. Desperately needed humanitarian aid must reach vulnerable Palestinian civilians in Gaza, and Canada is working closely with partners to build a humanitarian corridor. Hamas must immediately release all hostages, and Canadians and foreign nationals who wish to leave Gaza must also be allowed to do so.
L'honorable député de Yukon.
Mr. Speaker, since it was imposed upon them, Indigenous families and children have experienced
Well, I guess that's
racist
enough of.
discriminatory treatment by
Guess
Canada's
that's enough of
Family and
the
Children's
question
Services.
period for
Communities in the
October
Yukon
the
and across the
25th.
nation have
That
always
ends
known
the
that
live stream for today,
self-determination and
and
truth